welcome everybody back to another segment of Healthy Body, Healthy Mind. And thank you, Dr. Johann.
Thank you.
And we're going to pick up where we left off last time. So just to recap, we came back from the States. David had the symptoms accompanied with trauma. He did his own checklist. He came to you, and he had diabetes. Well,
No,
one.
we diagnosed that as type 1 TSS.
Okay, so what happens from one? Now there's two. Now you're saying there's many other levels. So what is the difference?
Put it to you in a different sense. Diabetes is now classified in different categories, but I don't want to become academic about it because it's totally a new world that's going on out there. And everybody's trying to find a cure or way and a means to get out of the insulin dependencies.
Okay.
Now, type 1 are insulin dependence.
Type 1 are?
Insulin dependence. And when David came to me, it was such a severe presentation, both the symptoms and the finding. My first thought was he's a type 1 diabetic. So my first thought was, obviously he's going to need to have a proper, thorough checkup done. Everything, just not doing an organ check, like checking on his cardiac function, an organ check on his kidney function, organ check on his liver function. It's a whole profile you do. And if it was that picture that I got a bit of a fright about, because he presented with quite severe symptoms, the loss, weight loss, extreme weight loss, paresthesia, limb pain, and burning in his feet.
His eyes, even
and his
couldn't
vision
see.
too.
One day we were in the store, he didn't even
Yes.
see me. He walked straight past me.
Lots of little things happened. So with a history of, there was a connection to the family side as well, from his family side. So, and even from my family side. So there were issues that you had to consider. So my first thought was type 1. And I said, this is going to require immediate assessment by an endocrinologist or physician. And I had that at the present time I saw him, immediate thought was he's a type 1. But as it happened to be, we had medication started just to get him over the first hurdle, because he'd just come back from America and he'd been traumatized by the separation of his family there, his brother's family. His whole lifestyle had changed. He'd come back into South Africa. He was traumatized. Post-traumatic syndrome of a person who's been uplifted, almost put into a separate area of his old life but new life, and almost felt as if he had been rejected. And he didn't know how to rectify it. And he was in panic. He had his whole family here. He had his wife, you, and his 2 daughters, had no work, no employment position, and he had to depend on his family in America, which is a terrible feeling, whereas he was so codependent on other things, his environment, and yet worked with his brother there. They did a lot of things together. So Clement was the person who actually had David, shall we say, brought to America to try and assist David, and Kim were going to work on subject. And I think that whole lifestyle of 10, 11 years had such an impact of comforts and at the same time confidence, and the children had great academic interest there. And when he came back here, all had vanished. I identified with that very easily, because as a child, I grew up in a country called Northern Rhodesia, and we left South Africa. And our education system was different. We went to an English system. There was no South African teaching system. It was a wholly foreign area. And I was at the age of 6. And of course, at the age of 6, you've remembered a lot of things from the time you were in South Africa. Now you're going through primary school, and you're learning a whole new subject. You're meeting friends, people different, and they're also ex-South Africans, English, foreigners, colonialist setup. But when you came back to South Africa to do your senior schooling, because the education system there carried you up to a certain point where the children left the primary area and came to South Africa for the senior, and that's when we came to boarding school or to our parents or grandparents, wherever family influence was, to college or good schools and education system that could take you the next step in your further advancement of your future. And that trauma of separating and leaving your parents behind thousands of miles away, you down here, and then suddenly your parents decide they can't stay up there. They miss the children far too much. So they decide to pack up and come back to South Africa. Now you as a child want to first go back home, say cheerio to the dogs, say cheerio to your neighbours, your friends and everything. We're all going up on holidays by train, and now that whole picture has changed. You're now back in South Africa, back with your cousins. And that's why our identifying of cousins became so important, because they were the people, the vestiges of what you left before you did. Your friends you left before when you went back to Northern Rhodesia. Those friends you left here were not there anymore, or they were older, or you'd separated for years, different lifestyles, growing up a different environment. So you couldn't transfer your new upbringing in a foreign country to your home territory, which is South Africa, and the colleges. So you identified with your cousins who you could understand, may understand you, because they knew when they saw you on various holidays you came down, that you were still okay, you were still the person they knew. But they even felt a bit strange about you. So the same experiences, David, your children, yourself, that separation period. The kids identified with their fellow Americans. They went to American school here, still there. At university, they meet foreign kids, they can interact. But in real terms, they have not had a separation. They haven't had a parting of that subject to say, you're not going back ever again. They couldn't cope. There were some coping mechanisms not dealt with. So that trauma, that post-traumatic trauma, that emotional separation, has influenced David's diabetes. Responded very well to the medication I put him on, which was simple medication. It was actually nothing spectacular. I'm not going to go into details. But it stabilized him. And then I realized after his blood test came back and everything else, he was actually a type 2 diabetic. Yeah. Managed orally with medication.
So no insulin? Is that
no insulin. And he could cope, and the specialists we were going to send him to, I telephoned and discussed, because you were in such a trauma state at that time, you weren't even a medical aid, you weren't even covered with costs. So we covered those tracks, and he was stable. And his diabetes was controlled on common sense, his diet, and his medication orally. My fear was he going to go to the next
which would be?
Stage, step 1 again, diabetes 1, which is the severe insulin-dependent kind. You see, that area is a very specialized area to deal with, because modern medicine now today have you measured to finer detail using blood tests to determine whether you are going to respond to that dose, and it's trial and error. No diabetic on insulin is ever going to be controlled on the same doses, the same time, every day. It's such a volatile situation. You've got to continually adjust. You've got to continually reassess. You've got to continually readjust your medication, meaning the units you take.
But there is now, so David's diabetes now number 2. So there is a level, you can stay at that level forever.
You could be, and you could cope, and you could even stay comfortably enough on the least medication. And you watch certain symptoms and changes, like your weight gain, your weight loss. Medication can
and he
cause...
changed his diet. We got rid of, really did get rid of sugar, did more walking, exercise. He did make a lifestyle changes.
He made a lifestyle change. We didn't take his stress away from America. He's continually need to return. When he did return, it was not a very good return. He went there to actually say cheerio to his brother, in a sense, and it was another trauma. So, you could understand the readjustment again, having to say separation period, this time separation of his brother. Not only the country, but his brother. So all these things have added to his trauma, another kind of emotional trauma. So we've got to watch his diabetes, see if it doesn't change, watch his weight gain, or any change in his physical change, symptoms, eyes, thirst, body, diet, exercise, peripheral neuropathies, we call them, the burning feet stories, circulation, very important, cardiac function, blood pressure, cholesterol. It's a whole spectrum that's got to be watched. So we'll watch him.
We'll watch him.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Maybe next time we talk about stage 1 diabetes. We'll see.
Yes.
Or
3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, there's all the other stages.
Yeah, other stages too. Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.